First and foremost, what the topic is, we're going to be talking about remote selling post-COVID, in particular to the enterprise sales. And we're going to run through a series of practical examples. But before we do that, I was hoping to see if you could help me out and if you could type into the chat box where you are from. So we can find the chat box. I'm going to pull it off screen share for a bit. And so in the chat box, if you could type in where you are from, there we go, location. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, a lot of people from all over the place. Oh, that's great. Okay, now, and then, you know, like at the bottom of the screen, you're going to find a little, you know, emoticon that you can say, a little emotion. I was hoping if you can find the thumbs up. If you can see my screen right now, can you give me a thumbs up as it's building? Yeah, you get great. I'm going to get thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to have a screen. Now, what we're going to be doing is Sari is going to be monitoring the chat. She's going to do a few things. Sari is our host. And, you know, among others, she's going to be making sure that people are properly muted and so on and so forth. We have a few co-hosts, both Dominique and Ken, you're made co-host as well. And so you may find yourself muted if we understanding that there's a certain noise in your background that is distracting. There's 3 steps I would like to ask you. Please ask your question through the chat box. You're welcome to speak up, but what we're looking for is that, you know, when we are monitoring the chat box and I will be interrupted by one of the co-hosts saying like, Jocko, we got a question, and then I'll be able to ask the question. Also, we're going to ask you occasionally to see if you want to join in on a chat or on a poll. Predominantly, we're going to be using the hand claps and the thumbs up signals. What I am going to ask you is to make sure that you focus. And so I'm already happy to see not the crazy backgrounds that we sometimes be seeing. You know, like a background is fine. Don't get me wrong. Background is fine. We're just trying to avoid the moving backgrounds with the crazy heads and stuff like that. Camera is requested to be on. And, you know, like I said, we're going to be muting you as there's a noise from your coming from your background, not trying to stop you from talking. That's it. Now, let me see if everybody gets their thumbs up ready. Look for it. Are you ready to get started? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Yes, good. Thank you. Okay. What is this about is about remote selling. Now, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the issues that we're running into. I'm not going to be talking about COVID as a disease or anything. And I hope that we can distinguish between those things that are important for health and those who are important for business. This is primarily looking at business. What we are currently looking at is these 3 big issues that we're trying to solve: pipeline creation, pipeline conversion, and churn retention. May I ask, from your perspective, you know, if you type in the letter A, B, or C, what is the most, and D means all of the above. Which one of these are you currently experiencing? A, B, or C? What is your biggest? D, all of the above. Thank you, Carter. Yeah. B, D, there we go. Yeah. Oh, we get a lot of, okay. A and B, D. Okay, so most of you, it looks like, most of you are all of the above, meaning that we all are sharing in the same pain. And in other words, creation, conversion, and expansion and retention are all the many B's, many A's. And that's where we're going to be looking at today. Now, the agenda that I've prepared for you follows the following kind of approach or the following mindset. What we are experiencing and what we are responding to is not the primary response. You know, the pandemic, just be home, work from home, be safe is the #1 thing. What we are responding to is the stopping of the buying that has occurred. Now, it didn't stop there because the buying is soon also going to lead to no more on-site selling. And that is going to lead soon to a new way of selling. What I want to point out with this is the following. I have a hard time contemplating how we're going to go back 6 months from 9 months from now. And when we're going to go back, how we are suddenly going to go back and walk into the Salesforce Tower somewhere in San Francisco. We're going to push on a hand pump and people say, go ahead, go have the meeting that you want. You're walking into a meeting and gosh forbid you're a carrier of a COVID or any other infectious disease. You take out an entire floor that as people are later on found to be having that disease, you know, like that floor is being taken out, 2 weeks out, no work. I have a hard time realizing that is the real world that we're going to. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say is like, hey, there's going to become a new way of selling. That new way of selling is remote selling because it's such an alternative for the buyer. The buyer does not always or hardly any time needs to require you. And so I believe that that is the world we are about to live in. And today I want to give you a view on that sample of what remote selling looks like. Now, the agenda is as follows. We're going to take a look at the productivity gap. We're going to use tools. We're going to give you a model for remote selling. I'm going to show you what the impact can be and take some next steps. Let's start with the productivity gap. What we see today here is a line of a drop in productivity. Horizontally, we have time. Vertically, we have productivity depicted. And what we see that in response to this disease, we see a drop in productivity, primarily because people are sent home. And not only the sellers, but also the buyers have been sent home. And selling is just no longer happening, primarily because buying ain't happening right now. Now, what we see, however, is that the activity still is high. We still see several people who have high activity. May I ask, for those of you who still see high activity, you still see a number of meetings that you're having, not necessarily sales, but meetings. Can you give me a thumbs up? Are you currently experiencing an increase in activity? Thank you very much, yes. So a few people see that, thank you. And where that comes from is as follows. The buyers are working from home and are having the time to do this. And so they may be ongoing in the purchasing process, but sooner or later, they may be derailed in a few weeks from now as they are recasting the budget, as the buyer, your executive say like, hold on, do we really need this right now? But in these next 2 to 4 weeks, and in the past 2 weeks, we just hear from all over the globe, from all countries, like, I've never been as busy as I've been, but with meetings, not necessarily with deal creation, but primarily with meetings. So we see that productivity, what we mean with that is not just meetings for the sake of meetings, but meetings for the sake of either true pipeline creation. So we see that there's an ongoing challenge, that pipeline has struggles, but that the activity is high. And that is a sign of productivity issues. Now,
Jacko, we had just one quick question in there from Jose Luis. Yep. Just wanted to know how this applies to sort of SMB, mid-market, and enterprise.
All of the above, all of the above, all at the same time, and all over the map too. Like, like some SMB because they're already used to remote selling less, some SMB because they're selling into a word market like hospitality really high, all over the map. What you'll see is from that decline, there will be a gradual return. Where we're at right now, that will take still a while. During the return, we're going to see some setbacks. We're going to see some lingering issues because things are going to continue. But essentially, we most likely will end up in a new normal. And that new normal we're going to talk about today. This road is expected to be measured in quarters, not months. I think none of us has ever been in this situation before, so it's hard to predict. Well, it will be 2 quarters, will it be like 3 quarters? But it is clearly believed that this is it's gonna be a while. What we are noticing with that is, what if we can do this quicker? Now, what I'm going to try to depict in this is the following. You are not competing against the impacts you're not competing with COVID-19, and you're not competing with the economic market situation. These are well beyond. What you're competing here and who you're competing with is the following. You're competing with your competitors who are on a normal recovery. And can we accelerate our recovery against those who do a normal recovery? Because if we can do that, then we can right now prepare for that. We can ramp faster. And what history has proven is that you can capture market share. This is the market share that you would capture against your competitors who are less agile in making this move to remote selling. Now, that is the key that we're trying to depict. We do not control how long it will be before the buyers start buying again and stuff like that. So it's all like at a certain point in time, we all start as the buyers start buying in your sector, in your specific market. For some markets that may have already started, for some markets that may still take 2-3 weeks, and for some market it may take another full quarter or another 2 quarters. But the moment in time that buying starts again, you want to be sure that you ramp faster. Now, with this impacting all areas of our pipeline, like it has become quite a complicated problem. And what I found recently very encouraging is when I listened to Lieutenant General Todd Simonite, who is the head of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And when he was confronted with a problem, he says, like, look, COVID is a really complicated problem. And with these complicated problems, you got to look at really simple solutions that are right in front of you. And so too do I believe that we got to look at that. Now, in this case, he was using stadiums, soccer stadiums and football stadiums for, like emergency. He was using all kinds of things that are available right in front of him in order for that emergency. And so too do we need to leverage the available infrastructure. This infrastructure is known, cloud, global, very sturdy. Devices are everywhere. We're all logging in from our devices, and tools extremely widespread. There's an app for everything, and you're going to see a whole bunch of those tools demonstrated today. But there's something for everyone. We combine all these, we got remote selling. That is the topic what we're going to use. What can we use as tools for our remote selling as we start in topic number 2? Now, as we start here, I would love for you first to listen shortly to this brief video, this voice from the past. And, like I want you to just let it come over you, what this gentleman, Steve Jobs, discussed in 1980. I'm going to hit click.
I remember reading an article when I was about 12 years old, I think it might have been in Scientific American, where they measured the efficiency of locomotion for all these species on planet Earth. How many kilocalories did they expend to get from point A to point B? And the condor one came in at the top of the list, surpassed everything else, and humans came in about a third of the way down the list, which was not such a great showing for the crown of creation. And but somebody there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human riding a bicycle. Human riding a bicycle blew away the condor, all the way off the top of the list. And it made a really big impression on me that we humans are tool builders, and that we can fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. And so for me, a computer has always been a bicycle of the mind.
When I got this video, my breath was taken away because I was looking for something. I didn't know that he had created this. It's a niche video. It's not one that you find commonly. But this thought of a bicycle and the amplification of both the economy of motion in this case, the efficiency of that, like this is the problem that we're trying to solve. We are not well suited for this, but with the tools that we have at hand, we can. And so what I'm going to depict to you today is a few techniques that we're going to look at where we can use tools as an amplifier. Now, in part, I'm going to use, the PowerPoint, or in this case, the Google Slides, and in part, I'm going to switch back and forth and give real demonstrations on how this can be done. These are 5 tasks that I'm going to depict, and well, let's get started. Developing a lead. Now, historically, when we were developing a lead, we use outbound calls, inbound content. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use content for an outbound call. I'm going to depict that as I go to my LinkedIn profile. And as I look up myself, go home, I'm going to go to my profile. I'm going to find there that I recently launched a particular article. And what we are seeing, and what is particularly what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for an article that was recently posted that creates content. The use of content as an outbound call here is key. This article that I post, this is an example. There's many people doing this. I'm not the only one. This is a way to generate very effectively both inbound and outbound traffic. This is so effective that, like ourselves, we primarily rely on this model. But I've heard, like great results. We've seen great results everywhere from this. What you see down here is a few basic concepts I want to point out to you. As an enterprise sales rep, my biggest challenge historically is the following. I do not want to send my marketing content to my people, to my network. And so as a result, many of your field reps are not leveraging their networks. And you as a company right now need to leverage their networks to generate new pipeline and new opportunities. And content is the key. The reason why I as an enterprise rep never wanted to distribute marketing content, because it simply wasn't good enough. It wasn't applicable to my audience. And so I held that content back. That means that today you got to create content that is so meaningful that it really matters to your clients. Now, I'm going to show you a few things on how to do that. I'm going to depict a few simple things that can be done. So number one here, we have to understand that companies are not buying from a brand, they're buying from a person in the enterprise world. And so what we are doing is we're publishing this, in this case, under Jocko, not under Winning by Design. We still co-publish it on Winning by Design, but it is very important that we publish this, in this case, under the person. We write a short activity down here. This is a post, not an article. We're writing a short thing. It's either a summary or a curation of the content. We do provide the link in the content. We've talked to LinkedIn. The link in the remarks doesn't matter. You can put the link in here. But one of the few keys that we know is really successful is the use of hashtags that matter to your audience, and only 3. You can't be hashtag happy here and start spamming or putting 10, 20 hashtags. When you do that, LinkedIn starts devaluing your post. It does not allow it. The importance here is you do not own your followers. LinkedIn, if you post an article, will not send this to all your followers. They are controlling it on their behalf. They will only open up the pipeline a little bit. And if people start engaging with it, then they open it further. These hashtags are important, 3 hashtags, in order to start opening the pipeline a little bit. Then next, what you'll see down here is we notice that the content here, visual content, 5 pictures is ideal. Why? Because when people start clicking on these pictures to zoom in, they spend more time on the article. That means it once again starts to elevate. And then, and this is important, once people start commenting on it, then you need to make sure that you engage. You need to like, respond, ask them a question, tag somebody in it. When that starts to do, that network starts to balloon, your distribution starts to balloon. And in this case, we created a call to action to a professional workshop, which you're all part of. And folks, this is a form of a sales pitch. I'm just not gonna really focus on Winning by Design. I just want you to understand, this is how it works. This is how content gets distributed. Now, what I'm gonna see, what I can take a look back is I can see that content coming back, and I can see when, like when the article comes in, I can take a look and see how certain viewership is looked at. I can see who shared it and so on and so forth. Now, proper shares, as my own team will demonstrate, proper shares need to be something with a tagline in it, some curation of content, adding other people to it. That is what we're looking for. That is the proper way of content distribution. Now, this content can be a video, can be alternative things. What we found is that the content today that people are really aching for is content that is more in depth. In this case, you're going to find that a content that, like a research article like we have written, has easily like 10, 20, 30,000 views and engagement on it, with a high sharing and a high inbound factor. And that is the key, as what I'm trying to explain here, is the control of this content and the way how the content can be used as an outbound call. I'm looking for, feel free at any point in time to ask a question about this, but you'll see down here a few things. Number one, a real person's brand in our world is 10 times more powerful than a company's brand. So we are posting that content. What you'll see down here is the sequence. Set up a call to action. Post a few like really interesting screenshots of that. Create an article with a call to action in there. And then you have two ways of generating both outbound and inbound. By sending that article as a private message, I'm creating an outbound message. This means that my AEs, or my field sales reps, can tag who they want to send this to that they have a connection with. We also see that people start liking it, giving it air, it starts to expose. And as a result, we start people seeing sharing. And as soon as they start sharing it with their organization, we can consider that form of an inbound. We can follow up with that company saying, and notice that, anything that we can do. What we're doing there is we are aimed at starting a conversation. The tricks that I've...
Jacco, Zach has a question I think is pretty near and dear to your heart. Jacco, can you please touch on video content via LinkedIn? For example, personal videos.
Video content is, you're on a thin road of success and failures, like walking on like the edge of a mountain. On the left, there's great success, and lavish, and on the right, there's sheer death and so on. What we find is that the content that generates a lot of views and popularity is not the leads that you're looking for. You sharing your thought of the day on LinkedIn is not what people are waiting for. It can have an adverse impact. Doing a whiteboard session where you like write on a whiteboard, whether you recorded it on a hand camera and where you describe something, a true finding, people love that. Doing a screen share, even what we're demonstrating here, short, people love that. But make it of influence to the buyer and help them educate. Here's what happens. Remember, a second ago, everybody gave the thumbs up because they're saying, Jacco, I have so much activity right now. And that is because buyers are educating themselves. That is what you're doing. You're now providing that content through video in order to educate them. Now, people in generally respond better to a human being. Now, a few things when you create that video, please do not try to make it perfect. Do not, like stop the cut, do it over again. Like a conversation like this, it's live. Just let it roll. Get used to it, and you will get better over time. Video, very powerful when done right. Very hurtful when done wrong. Walking on, walking outside, like walking your dog outside and sharing with somebody your thought of the day, that may get you a popularity vote, but it won't help you generate good leads. What I described to you is finding leads. And so what I'm going to do next, we're going to ramp it up a little bit. I'm going to help you navigate the organization. Like a next activity that we find that enterprise reps normally have a challenge with is, how do I navigate the organization? Now, when I used to do that myself, I would walk the floor, talk to people and so on. I was the Disney account executive for VeriSign, and I would create and develop relationships this way. That can be done today through your tools. I want to demonstrate now. We're going to use what's called navigating the organization. Now, what you see here is an overview of the Winning by Design map of how we map a buying center. A buying center is the roles champion decider. That's a buying center. It's well known. You can find back even on Wikipedia, find good descriptions around that. But what you see here is how a seller navigates an organization. He or she is trying to find an initiator. They introduce them to the champion. The champion says, you're really the one who's running into this project is the decider. The decider wants to buy it, but has a gatekeeper. And once the influencer clears the gatekeeper, the executive buyer approves the purchase. A user can be very influential on the lower left side, and that user often can be the initiator can give your product, your service, your whatever it is to an enthusiast who starts using the product and then reports back to the decider like, hey, that product is for real. Actually, I have to say, I'm amazed. When you create that, you create a way to navigate the organization if you could induce that. Now, for example, with ABM campaigns, we're trying to induce that. An ABM campaign is focused on the initiator, the champion, the user, and the decider, and it's focused on getting those people the content that they need, whether that is a white paper, an invite to a webinar, a book, an article, whatever it is. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate that organization, and I'm going to give a demonstration. Now, what I'm asked for is for Dominic. co-CEO of Winning by Design. And I'm going to use Dominique's profile. So I'm going to look for Dominique, and I'm going to give you a demonstration of that. Now, Dominique is a very, a former CMO, CEO, multiple time CEO. And so she's a very reflective identification of an executive that people want to get to. And I'm going to use Dominique's, what I'm going to use here, a plugin that in a second I will disclose what that is, because otherwise all of you will be like immediately going to this plugin. What I'm disclosing here is, a description. This plugin is currently, looking at Dominique's profile. And as they're looking at that profile, they're determining that Dominique tends to be outgoing, decisive, with a preference for shaping new ideas over existing ones. And that is exactly who Dominique is. We know that about her. They tell her that she's an initiator here in that, like what we call the DISC profile. And it gives us a few things, descriptions about, in this case, Dominique as an executive. And it gives her like, she loves to emphasize on the future. She loves to stick to the big picture. And those of us who know Dominique go like, yeah, exactly right. Thinking on their feet, opportunity to perform. And like these are all things of Dominique. Now, what I see in here also, if I want to say like, hey, give me further advice, I can even let it say, hey, I want to email Dominique and I want to set up a meeting. What you will see in this case, the tool gives me a few points of advice that I need. And this is, is becoming really useful in today's world, that it gives me a few things on what I can do. Now, aside from that, although very useful, I'm going to focus here on this DISC profile. In this DISC profile, I'm learning something. It has positioned Dominique. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the DISC profile as follows. I'm going to apply, I'm going to click present. And I'm going to use, gives me this, and I'm going to map that buying center and that process. I'm now mapping that to the entire process here. And that is what, like I'm pointing out to. I'm going to map that, and every one of these activities are now mapped automatically. What I was looking for initiator. And that gave me, by knowing in the DISC profile who I'm looking for, and now knowing which actions to take, I have started to navigate the organization. And what I can do, for example, with a sales organization, I can now ask people, an SDR, an ADR, BDR, help me identify 4 initiators, help me identify a certain amount of champions, and so on and so forth in the account. Essentially, I am learning to navigate. In that process, I'm also learning what is the most effective way of communicating with them. And that is the key skill here, learning how to communicate effectively. What do I do? What do I not say? How do I write an email? What's the words that they're sensitive to? What do they like? What do they like, a white paper or a video, and so on? All this is given and allows me to navigate the organization. Questions on this? And there goes the tool. And in this, as soon as people see that link and notice that, that it's no longer a hyperactive link due to security measures, we're going to lose half the audience who is now navigating to that link, trying to click and go like, wait, what? How much? Where does this come from? What is it displaying on me? Stay focused. Stay focused. We're going to get more of that, a lot more. This is how you navigate. This is a new way of doing. And what we're starting to see is I can do things faster and better, and so on and so forth. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be tackling the stakeholder meeting. Now, this is a little simpler because many of you who are on the phone already mastered this, but the stakeholder meeting, we're going to elevate our ability to have a stakeholder meeting and to use Zoom. What we see down here is a few basic principles that in many cases are not well exercised. What we see here is that obviously we want people that turn their cameras on. We want to make sure that you have a proper setup. Now, setups are not given today. We have a wide variety of setups that can be used. But as you see down here, there's a few setups that we can walk with. The back screen is white, and so on and so forth. Questions. I'll leave it here for room for questions. Let's see. How many of you, I would love to hear it, how many of you are using Zoom or any other tool? What is your primary tool that you're currently using? Oh, Hangouts too. That's quite, it's good to see. A lot of Hangouts. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So Zoom and Hangouts are the predominant ones. Okay. What you'll see here, and this not always applies, Hangouts has that in a little bit of different setup, but what we want to make sure is the effective use of chat. Obviously, the setup with front lighting is really important, and stuff like this. This is how you hold a stakeholder meeting. A stakeholder meetings brings together multiple people from multiple areas of the department to drive that decision. And the key to the stakeholder meeting that we found is that by doing it on a Zoom, it actually goes faster, because it was really hard for people, to travel all the way down 2 weeks, then to make sure that people are all calendar at the same time, same conference room, a problem. To be on site and to actually have the conference room historically has also proven to be a challenge. And so what we find is that this historically has been a challenge. But now online, it goes faster. This is the stakeholder meeting that we can now make online. Next, proposal discussion. What we found in the proposal discussion is, essentially what we see down here is an example of the use of a particular tool. Tools like a BombBomb, tools like a Soapbox allow us to do this. What you see here doing, and I'm going to see if I can do a quick screen share, Roelof is describing a proposal to a client
within Showpad.
And so what he's doing here, and he's showing and he's sharing that. Now, in parts of during this conversation, he is, in the beginning, he opens up his video.
Enablement.
In the middle, he will have like content, and then occasionally he will have a side-by-side.
This is the mapper.
And as you'll see, as he steps through this particular proposal, he is able to not only combine the proposal itself, but best practices and so on and so forth. This proposal review, in the end, will lead to a pricing where you see him highlight, for example. Some of these best practices that Roelof is using are depicted here. He keeps it between 3 to 4 minutes. He highlights sections. He clicks on the document to share. What we are doing is we are recommending proposals, for example, with certain capabilities to share as a shared doc, allowing your recipients to edit and make comments. Once that proposal gets sent out, actually the proposal starts to live inside an organization. It starts to be handed off from one to another. We see that through the share, and we start to see how it accelerates decision-making, because getting everybody into a meeting may take a week, but sharing the proposal in a short video is actually taking quite effective. This is indeed a recorded proposal video. We record it. And the key that we are making sure to keep it short. Also, what we make it key is that you don't try to record the perfect version by doing it 20 times. Just record it, go, just go. Don't worry about you stuttering or when you say something. It's normal. It's like any other normal conversation. Just record it. As a result, we are able to make the discussion internally significantly faster. Last one, the reference call. Now, what we find is that in many cases, people are under-leveraging and underutilizing the tools. And what I'm going to demonstrate to you is, once again, a tool that is heavily underutilized for it. When we are often asking for the reference call, what we are looking for, what the client is looking for, is kind of like, will this work in my world? And they're looking for a reference call that is relevant to them. What I'm going to demonstrate is the use of G2 Crowd in order how to do that. And so I'm going to just use our own G2 Crowd here. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to just look it up. There we are, Winning by Design. And I'm going to look for reviews of Winning by Design. So what I'm looking for, Winning by Design. And then what many people don't know, how to effectively use G2 Crowd. How to effectively use this to your advantage. And so I'm going to click on reviews, and then I'm going to do something. It's not for the reviews. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, we all got 5 stars in this segment. That's not the point. What the point is that I'm doing down here is that it allows me, and many people don't know that, is I just want the executive sponsors. We got 39 executive sponsors. I just want an executive sponsor. Or do I want to have a user? I want to have somebody who actually is a team member or an owner or a principal. But I can literally, now most of you are always interested in that executive sponsor. And so it will give you a name of an executive sponsor, in this case, Jesse. Now, I can indicate that by market segment. So I can say, hey, it needs to be a mid-market segment. And so now I'm only going to get, and I think, yeah, Jesse is also mid-market. And so I'm going to get a very relevant reference. I can straight up email that person. Hey, can you ask me? Now, The reason why this is so important to me is I don't know about you folks, but in the past, the primary way that, like if somebody says, hey, can I have a reference call? I'm saying, sure. You want to talk to Eric? Yeah, sure. Okay. I set you up with Eric. Eric is our reference call. Then I call Eric calls me, Jocko, I got a reference call. What do you want me to tell him or her? Can you talk about this, this, and this? Okay, and what do you want me to tell about the weakness? Oh, tell him this, this, and this. Okay. And then that conversation takes place. Like, that's a reference call. So all these prepared reference calls really don't do anything other justice than checking the box. I had a reference call. But it's in general pretty much canned and so on and so forth. What this allows is a proper backdoor reference. And this proper backdoor reference allows you not only to get the straight up executive sponsor, it allows you to either request contact, or if you flip the switch and you're logged in with LinkedIn, it literally tells you who you can connect and reach out to via LinkedIn. Again, for me, and this is key, when I want to set up a reference call, I don't know about you folks, but it often takes weeks before the reference call takes place. Before I get two executives, the CEO of company X and the CEO of company Y, to talk to each other, it is a mingling, and then I get like, sometimes it cancels. It entirely delays. There is no need. We need to learn how to use this more effectively. What I'm pointing out here is that there's simply a certain amount of tools that can be used to accelerate the sales process.
Jocko, we have one more question about tools from Bart. He's asking, do these tools also apply to SMB, or what adaptations should we think of?
They apply to SMB, they apply to enterprise, they apply to any world, anyone. And then, like whether it's the referrals, obviously you can look that up, but all this applies to 100% to both SMB and enterprise. However, and this is important, I'm going to depict that. No one has seen $100,000 an enterprise sales team sell $100,000 deals 100% with remote selling. We are not aware of a company that is doing this in a scalable manner. We're not. We're all in this together. If you think that we can go and close $250,000 million deals with 100% selling, who can we learn from because they've done it 20 times or over 20 years? Not there. And so, it gives you an idea of like, hey, we need to really start figuring out like how to do that, which I'm gonna, some of these tools will have to apply to enterprise sales now. There is no way back. What I'm gonna show to you is what the mathematical model behind that is and how we can do that. In this, I'm gonna use an enterprise sales. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use remote selling for an enterprise sales. Now, what I would love to learn from you using your chat box, who of you is currently mostly using in-person sale by typing the letter A, who mostly remote selling, and who mostly uses inside sales by typing the letter. Most in-person, I got a lot of A's, little B's, and okay, so a lot of person, mostly remote selling. And so A's and B's. And what we see here is, like that typically is the case. Most of you are sitting between that A and B, and that means that you're either mostly selling in person or that you're selling partially in person, but that none of you has experience with 100% remote. And that is the track that we're going to try to solve. Now, the other challenge that has occurred is that we essentially have become distributed, meaning we're no longer sitting at a central location. And so for those who were in Camp C, inside sales, that now has been distributed and added a significant complication on top of that. That gives us, of some of the best practices that we've seen in the past. Now, what we have down here is the Winning by Designs metrics. You may have seen some of these in our books that we've published. And we see down here, based on the left, on annual contract value, based on how many deals a year a rep on average sells, the average win rate that they have, average sales cycle, and the amount of calendared meetings that they're using. Not the calls on the meetings, but the average calendared meetings that they're using in 100% remote. Now, you can see, obviously if you do 72 deals a year and you do that times $5,000, you're probably going to end up about 300, 350, 360 or something like that, right? You're going to end up about $360-ish $1,000 a year. If you multiply $20,000 deals times 24, you're going to see that rep approximately brings in $480,000. What you see here is lower win ratios, because the lower the win ratio is often an indication of how the buyer's process happens. If you're an enterprise grade software process, you're not allowed to just get a bid from a vendor just to kick in the tires. You really have to have budget aligned. When you're just kicking around with a Google plugin, like a Crystal knows, you do not have to have budget, and therefore the buying percentage, the win rate percentage is lower. If you look at this, what the key down here is that SMBs, they even generally have already gone mostly remote. We work with lots of companies. We've now dealt with over 500 plus, probably closer to 1,000 companies. And there's just a lot of companies that sell to the SMB that have already done this. I think it's more abnormal if we see that an SMB sales team actually is in person. It does happen. We see some of this happening in Brazil, some of this happening in Belgium, where the distances are closer, for example, in Belgium, and where you don't have to jump on a plane to get to your clients. But what I want to focus on is what at enterprise sales, what you see down here. And that is really one of the challenges, because honestly, excuse me, none of us really have had the experience to do that 100% remote. Some people say real estate is like that. It's not. Real estate is only recognized for the 3% commission. So $1 million deal comes in at a $30,000 size deal. And so what we see is that, like that is deal size because you're not responsible for the $1 million product, so to speak. So we have seen few enterprise sales teams that have gone 100% remote. Now, what we see, what is some of the difference between hardware and software is primarily what we call the proof of concept. The key to the difference here, and I'm going to define that here as in a second, I'm going to come to that where the difference lies. What I'm going to focus on is I'm going to focus on the $100,000 deal. Now, a $100,000 SaaS deal equates to about $500,000 hardware deal. It's about 3 to 5x with some support and services. So a $100,000 deal as a software contract value, first year contract value, equates to about $500,000 value deal if you sell perpetual hardware. What we see down here, I want you to take a quick look at those metrics. We see 28.5% win rate, give or take, 150-day sales cycle with about 12 calendar meetings, with about 50% of that taking remote. Well, let's take a look at the definition of where those things come from. What's the model behind it? Folks, what I'm about to explain is absolutely key. What we need to learn here is the mathematical model behind it. What I'm trying to depict is that win rate, which is the big arrow at the bottom, essentially is the multiplication of multiple conversion rates of each independent meeting. So if I want to have a 30% win ratio, I probably have to have a 90% conversion rate on that first, an 80% on that second, 70, and so on and so forth. And if I multiply all of them together, then I get a 30% win ratio. So too, the sales cycle is adding up all the times with the meeting and the time in between, you add it all up. And that becomes the sales cycle. Key here is I'm primarily adding up the time between meetings because the time of the meeting itself, being 30 minutes to an hour, is marginal compared to the 2 weeks it takes in between these meetings. So I'm just adding up the time in between the meetings, not necessarily the time of the meeting included in there. What you see here is that the win rate is a product of, and the sales cycle is a sum of. And that is what I'm going to take a closer look at. What you see here, and what we have now run over the past weeks against multiple enterprise sales executives, we've seen here a basic level of what are the calendar meetings, what is happening on site, and so on and so forth. I get 21 opportunities at the top. 81% of the opportunities that I'm getting turn into the second discovery call. I have a discovery call with that, and then 80% turn into 17 that want to have a next discovery call. I have 95% of that convert, and then I have 16 who are interested in a walkthrough. I have 80% convert that, and I got 12% with the discovery with a few members of a broader team, and so on and so forth. When you add all this up, it comes with a win rate between 20 and 35%. It comes down to about 6 commits. The amount of sales cycles in between, heavily debated among people. I had to use about 1 week, 2 weeks, and 4 weeks just to indicate. The previous question, where is this different in enterprise, particularly in hardware, is in meeting number 6. That meeting, the proof of concept, can, as many of you know, be the Achilles heel. By our use of the thumbs up, how many of you are using an on-site, either remote via a server login or hardware equipment? How many of you are using a proof of concept in your sales cycle? I got 1, 2, 3. So I got a 3. So those of you who use the 4, 5. So those of you who use the proof of concept, you know, in enterprise sales, that's the Achilles heel. Now, the high conversion rate, 80%, some of you will tell me sitting there murmuring to yourself, I wish. Yes, that needs to be in the world of 80% is super high, because that proof of concept, if you do it wrong, which happens in most of the cases, it is not used as a proof of concept. It's more as a sales demo. If you use it as a sales demo, you're going to see that drop to 30%. And that is obviously, that's commonly a misuse of that. Now, run with that and see down here, hey, on average, 12 meetings, on average, 30% conversion rate, some there, 6 commits, and between 135-day sales cycle. By a use of a thumbs up, for those of you doing enterprise sales, is this within reason? Give me a thumbs up if I am in a reasonable time frame. This seems to be reasonable. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Zach. Carter, Jesse. There you go. Nicole. Okay, so everybody like, hey, within reason. Some is a little bit shorter, some is a little bit harder, but hey, we're in the ballpark. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to map this, and I'm going to map that to an enterprise sales playbook. We've already worked from that in a second ago. We already were able to convert those tasks. Now I'm simply going to say is, hey, with the tools I've been given and this model being the approximate model, what will the impact be if I move to 100% remote selling? Ready? Let me know if there are questions. Okay, ready, set, deep breath. We're entering the world of math. May I ask, by the use of A, B, C, or D, how many of you have metrics? A, we're having all of our metrics, we're pretty in good shape. B, we're having most of them, we probably could use some improvement. C, we're having a few, but probably we need to do some work. Or D, we're not having. By using your keyboard, striping in B, C, B, C. Where are you at? B, C. A few A's, yeah. Okay, so a lot of you feel like, hey, we have some of them. We're somewhere hovering, the bell curve quickly is becoming B and C, or actually it's trending towards B and C. Okay, good, good, good. Now, with these metrics that we now know is like, hey, you may probably have your win rate. You should have your win rate. Now, remember, I said a little while ago, 12 meetings were needed on average to get a win rate of 30%. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to demonstrate the impact on this overall sales cycle by taking 3 actions. I'm going to reduce the number of meetings, I'm going to increase the conversion rate per meeting, and I'm going to decrease the day between meetings. And I'll give you an idea. I'm going to reduce the number of meetings because I have floated the proposal in a video. I don't need as many review videos anymore. It's gone, and so on. The days between meetings are shortened up, for example, because I'm able to do a stakeholder meeting, not 2, 4, 5 weeks from now when everybody's scheduled to be on site, not when I need to travel for 2 weeks to get there and 2 weeks, and so on. I'm going to be able, as a result, to reduce the amount of meetings and to shorten the time between meetings. And then I'm going to use these advanced techniques that are tool aided, such as Crystal Knows and use of LinkedIn and effective use of AI in order to increase the conversion rate per meeting. So if I can use all the tools that I just demonstrated to reduce the number of meetings, to improve the conversion rate, and to decrease the amount of days between meetings, what would the impact be? Let's focus on reduced number of meetings first. What we notice is that if I have 12 meetings to take the win rate, that when I take the square root of that, and I'm ready for you folks to be a second to let this sink in. Get ready. This means that on average, every meeting of those 12 meetings, every one of them, on average, need to convert at 90.4, every one of them. And this depicts the challenge of enterprise selling. If I would do the same thing for a 20% win ratio and 2 meetings in SMB, you're going to see it's approximately 50% conversion per meeting. 50% conversion for 2 meetings equates to SMB winning. 12 meetings converting on average at 90% is enterprise grade selling. That's the difference. That is the complication of enterprise sales, because you have so many 0.9 times 0.9 times 0.9 that is happening here. Now, if I can reduce, if I can keep the win rate, I keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm using tools, and I can reduce it to 10 meetings, watch what will happen to my win rate. By taking off 2 meetings, my win rate improves to 36.4%. This depicts that I can improve my win ratio by reducing the meetings. If my tools and technology and my way of remote selling allows me to reduce by 1 or 2 meetings, I can bring it down from 30% to 36.4%. That is significant. Next, I'm going to depict what the increase in conversion rate, what the impact of that will be. Now, again, I want you to take notice the marginal gain that I'm making here. The win rate, as we just came out to, was 90.4% per meeting. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 90.4% and I'm going to increase that times the 10 meetings, and I'm going to turn each of that, see to the left, I'm going to increase that from 90.4% to 92%. And look how that pumps up once again my win ratio. Again, a whopping difference. Obviously, I made these small changes, 12 to 10, and you may say, Jocko, we cannot drop it from 12 to 10. It's going to be from 12 to 11 or 12 to 11 and a half on average. Or, we are not able to increase from in this case, from 90% to 92%. It's going to be 91.2. Great. Small change, big gain. This is because it's compounded so effectively over so many meetings. This is what happens, when we increase the win ratio. Next one we're going to talk about is what happens when I decrease the days between meetings. I'm going to decrease what I said earlier. I had 12 meetings and I took an average, in this case for the example, an average of 96. That equates to 8 days between meetings. If I reduce that from 8 days between 2 meetings, now remember, I'm going to reduce that to the amount of meetings. So on the left, you see I'm taking 2 meetings out, 10 meetings. And then I'm reducing from 8 days to 7 days. Again, I'm shortening it up. That means I'm going down from 96-day sales cycle to 70-day sales cycle. All I'm doing is I'm going from 8 days between to 7 days. This is where remote selling most likely has the most advances to make, because we spend a lot of time on traveling and scheduling, and the scheduling from people to meet from multiple parts of a department at the central location often takes a lot of time. What we see here is the combined efforts of reducing the amount of meetings from 12 to 10 and improving from 90 to 92 and reducing from 8 to 7 days. The compound impact for many enterprise companies is measured at such a high volume in the millions of dollars that it's hard to put it on a slide and make you feel like it sounds reasonable. Yet, the SMB market experienced that already. We have no chance or we have no choice whether we go to 100% selling in the enterprise or not. It is happening and it is worthwhile. The question here is, are you able to prepare now for it? Are you able to prepare for this so you can ramp faster and that you can harvest on that market share later on, gain from the efforts in investing in that preparation right now? That is the key to remote selling to the enterprise. Before I step further, any questions here before I bring up the next, we go to the next part of this discussion? Thank you, Jesse. By a sense of give me a sense of a thumbs up. Are you still with me? Does this make sense? Do you see what I'm trying to do? Thank you. What I'm trying to depict is like, folks, don't be afraid of remote selling. Embrace it. Like, let's put some math behind it. Like I recently was listening to like I'm sometimes emotional about it, but the whole thought about COVID, and in this case, Bill Gates was explaining this, but it was with such calmness that he started off with. He said, science is on our side And so too, as we move to remote selling for the enterprise, science is on our side. Look at these numbers. This is on our side. What we have to overcome is a few more things. Thank you, Marcel. You indicated that the percentages go up later in the sales cycle. So the later meetings have less impact. They do in the large, and obviously this is for a reason. What Marcel is referring to, the early meetings converted 80% and the later on meetings converted 98%. So indeed, you are right that the impact you make on the meetings, and that's for a reason that the client has already bought into this. They're already committed to it one way or another. They have most likely have been qualified to have budget and a critical event and all those needs that you want to. So that's why you see the conversion rate higher, particularly to those last meetings where you're going to commit. You're going to see particularly lower upfront as your buyer is reducing it to amount of vendors. We are SMB, a question by Bart. Can you help me? I can't read it. Ken, can you read it out? Because I can't read what it's too small for me.
We are SMB, but I did not realize it, but this is so resonant. This is more a comment. We don't do all things well, but this is where our success or failure as an SMB lies. Very insightful content.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. So that is, you know, like that. Let's step forward because it ain't that easy. I mean, like this, first and foremost, science is behind us. This can be done. The tools are there to use for us. Next, what we now see is that other things have changed. We cannot just say, ignore the fact that suddenly we are all working from home. We're struggling, you know, to have a number of things that we have to balance, whether it's raising kids or loved ones that we have to take care of, and so on and so forth. What we do want to notice is a few things here. We have to manage on hours worked, not on hours worked, but on the deliverables delivered. As a manager, you can no longer with a remote sales team. What I find that is different, that you might find in some cases that when you start helping people embrace remote selling in the enterprise, you actually end up going back to almost a daily call, not a daily stand-up of an hour, but quick check-ins. Have you been able to do this and that? The other thing is what it's in the middle down here. Your remote meetings need to shorten up to about 30 minutes. And we generally recommend to end early, which we will do today in this session as well. One of the great things that we find is to teach each other and to create a virtual power hour where one of you explains it to the other. Now, for example, you can do a course or a Gong recorded call. You listen to that call and you improve and say like, hey, here's where the proposal really went well when I reviewed it, or here's where the stakeholder meeting went wrong. But to review that as a team and to create a virtual power hour to work on something. These are a few of the things. I let you read some of the others as I take a sip of my Red Bull, but I want you to think about that. There's not just change in work, there's also change in management and what? I feel like I'm a Red Bull commercial. Thank you, Dan Brown, for being with me. I see that's the water bottle. Thank you. Okay, next steps. As I are wrapping this up and opening up for a round of questions, there's a few next steps that we suggest. First and foremost, I want you to think that there's three things that you need. You need to execute on the playbook. You need to learn how to operate the tools. You need to train on expert skills. This is the only part where I'm gonna, and all this needs to happen online. This is the only part where you're gonna give me the 5-second winning by design pitch. Guess who does all these three things? Voila, that's us. We help you transform your sales process to become an online expert level. We'll help you integrate these playbooks in your tool stack and optimize and coach. And then we train the team on how to do this. All of that, you know, like that is what we do. That is why we live in. So that's us. We offer this for those of you who want to move forward. You can, you know, like for companies who are more interested, they can get an early on workshop where we step through this exact session, but just for your company. And we do that in order to help you to bring the awareness inside the company, get all the noses in the same direction. And then, you know, you can buy an early on evaluation from us. The question here is to the right. And I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let you read it out into your mind. But that is the key. Where are we right now? As I come to a close, I want you to think of the following. I believe that this, if you do nothing, this is what your competitors are dependent on to protect their business. That hand pump. This is what I'm going to go back. I'm going to sell as a person. I'm going to pump my thing. I'm going to walk up and the buyer is going to expect me to come in. folks, I don't believe that that is a very good way to think about our business moving forward. I think that remote selling, and there has been a track record for this. Anno 2008, we saw as that market at that point in time collapsed, we saw up to that point, SMB sales was not moved to 100% remote. It moved to nearly 100% remote over those during that crisis. It is what brought us Salesforce. It is what brought us Marketo. It's what brought us Dropbox. All of them leverage 100% remote sales process, primarily focused on selling to the SMBs. It was automated with tools. It was data-driven. It was with very specialized skills and SDRs and ADEs. What we're seeing right now is simply the next step of that. By the buyer no longer able to see you, we're going to see a hard switch that the enterprise sales too can no longer be the black box, that they too now need to remove the remote sales process, automated with tools, with data-driven metrics, and with specialized skills.